Hello everyone, welcome back to Charlie's London. It's the first time in a long time I've done a video, but there's no better day to do it because I want to talk to you all about the 100th anniversary of probably what is one of my favourite Chaplin films, and that is, of course, The Kid. So The Kid was released on the 21st of January 1921, so 100 years ago today. It's an absolute spectacular film. It has the little Jackie Coogan, who is about 5 years of age when he makes this film. The acting is absolutely superb. You've got the tramp, and I think for me, what I love about it is in September 1921, after the release of The Kid, Charlie comes back to London, triumphant and victorious as one of the most famous men in the world after leaving England in between 1912 and 1913. Now, The Kid holds so many different messages for people. It's considered to be very sentimental. It's considered to be incredibly clever. It's considered to be comedy genius. But there's so much behind The Kid that people don't realise. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Now, The Kid comes off the back of the First World War. Not directly after. Chaplin's most famous film to do with the First World War was Shoulder Arms, released in 1917. But the story of the First World War is really, really closely connected to Chaplin's return and the anticipation that he had when he came back to London. Now, he came back to London in, like I said, early September 1921, and he boarded the Olympic from America, the Olympic being a sister boat of the Titanic, by the way, and came over to London, or came over to Southampton. And when he was on his way over, he was really nervous about being here. He hadn't been here in so many years. He didn't know if people were going to respect him, were going to care. He didn't know if he was going to get booed, that he was going to get completely, people weren't interested. And halfway across the Atlantic, he starts to receive telegrams, and people are desperately trying to get interviews with him, desperately trying to get him to talk to them. They're calling him a conquering hero. They're calling him a warrior. They're calling him the return of a Trojan, or even all these analogies with mythical gods and creatures and so on. And when he comes back, he's mobbed. He stays in the Ritz, and the pictures that you can see make it look like the 1960s, and you think about the Beatles, are absolutely incredible. This must have been such a weight off of his shoulders, because there are false accusations that Chaplin refused to fight in the First World War. In fact, in the 1991 Robert Downey Jr. film, the scene where he returns to London for this very part, he has a pint of beer thrown over him. As far as we know, that actually didn't happen. In fact, British soldiers have been recorded of sending Chaplin their medals because they believed that he deserved them more than they did, because he had kept them going for the years they were fighting. He actually sent as well donated reels, so that they had something to watch out there. There are postcards that exist of soldiers who had been thrown over the trenches in an explosion, had their backs broken, and these postcards show the soldiers laying on the beds and the films being projected onto the ceiling so that they can actually see these Chaplin short reel films. So very, very different to how we're made to believe that Chaplin was seen. The reason for this was a man by the name of Alfred Harmsworth Lord Northcliffe, who was Minister of Propaganda and also owned the Mirror Group at the time, had bought the rights to make a Charlie Chaplin biography by a woman called Rose Wilder Lane. Now, the problem was it was all a bit made up. And Chaplin and his brother Sidney got hold of it, realised what was going on, and pretty much stopped it being released. By that time, Alfred Harmsworth had spent a lot of money on getting this so he could serialise it in his newspapers and couldn't use it. All of a sudden, from about 1915, when this happens, Chaplin's a coward. Chaplin's a shirker. Why is he not coming back to London to support the troops? Why is he not enlisting? Chaplin actually did enlist, but he was too short and underweight, and his attestation papers are actually in the archives for the Royal Fusiliers Museum. Anyway, as I go off topic ever so slightly. So my point is, when he returned to London after making The Kid, there was a lot of emotion attached, probably not more so than the emotion that was attached to actually the making and getting out of this film, because even down to the production of this film, there was many issues. Chaplin had married a young girl by the name of Mildred Harris. Mildred Harris had told Chaplin that she was pregnant after a very short affair. Chaplin, trying to do the right thing, married her, only to find out that the pregnancy was phantom, whether or not, as the Downey Jr. film speculates, that she didn't know and was trying to entrap him. People have suggested that Mildred's character is that probably wasn't the case. And even Charlie himself, in his own autobiography, talks very kindly about Mildred Harris, unlike his second wife, Lita Gray, who he only donates one line to. Now, Mildred has, obviously it's a false pregnancy. He tries to carry on the marriage as best he could, but sadly it doesn't really work out. However, she does fall pregnant and gives birth to a small boy called Norman Spencer Chaplin, and sadly, he dies after only it was 3 days old. By this time, Charlie's having real creative issues. He's fallen behind with projects with First National. He's working on an idea for a film called The Waif. He's auditioning. He's got the idea for the kid, and he's sort of, his mind is not really creatively where it should be. He goes to the cinema and he sees Jackie Coogan performing, and he thinks this kid is absolutely incredible. Now, at the time, there is no plans to cast Jackie in the kid. The kid was called The Waif at this point, and the character did not represent Jackie Coogan at all. However, there is a serious amount of dealings with the grief process that you can see transpiring in this film. And Chaplin is, he uses the kid, many historians suggest, to actually get through his grieving process. The film title is changed to The Kid, but he finds, he starts playing around with this idea of different children, and someone actually says, well, what about little Jackie Coogan? And then someone else says, you won't be able to sign Jackie Coogan. He's just signed up with Arbuckle, of all people. And then Charlie goes, Arbuckle? I wanted to sign Jackie Coogan. Turns out it wasn't Jackie Coogan, the little Jackie Coogan. It was big Jackie Coogan. So the rest is history. The kid is made. Mildred Harris tries to seize the production of the kid to claim assets during their divorce. Chaplin is able to take it cross state, and that actually doesn't happen. He gets to release the film. The scene in the film where he has little Jackie taken away from him by the fostering agency, many historians have obviously made the connection between that being part of Chaplin's own childhood. However, there is another thought process, another theory. Chaplin had a younger brother called Wheeler Dryden. Wheeler Dryden appears actually in Limelight as the doctor. Now, Wheeler Dryden's father, Leo Dryden, was not Charlie's father. Hannah had a relationship after she split with Charles Chaplin Sr., and little Wheeler is born. The story goes that one day, Leo barges into where Hannah is living and rips the baby from her arms. There's a tussle. He leaves, and she doesn't see the child. And Charlie doesn't see him till many, many years later when he's grown up. There's not quite sure if Charlie was there. There are some indications that he was, or that his mother told him the story, so he remembers it quite vividly. He was only a very small baby, and sometimes as historians can say, sometimes you remember something being a memory of yours, but actually it's because it's been told to you so many times. So it's a bit grey, that area. But the story is very, very reminiscent of the story that happened in The Kid. So whether it is that, or it's just things Charlie's seen being in the boys' home when he was small, it's definitely got that pull to his homeland of London. Charlie first starts using the idea of playing around with London-based sets in films like Easy Street, which is based on East Street, which is East Street Market, where he was born. The lampposts are not very British. The set is not very, it is very British. The set is not very American. It is very English, anglicised, if you like. This is then seen again in the apartment in The Kid, which many people believe is meant to be 3 Poundall Terrace, where Charlie spends many of his years in desperation when Hannah is really succumbing to mental illness. This film is called nicknamed Six Reels of Joy. It is an absolute gem. It originally was 60, I think it was 68 minutes long. The original cut was 68 minutes long. And then in 1972, it is remastered and it is less than an hour. Charlie liked to play around with his films, especially in his later life when he was living in Switzerland, and he'd add his own commentary and add his own music. And many a times as well, as with Shoulder Arms, he filmed from many different angles. So there are different versions of these films that exist. The Gold Rush has two endings. Really was a bit of the George Lucas of the silent film era, really. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for stopping by with Charlie's London. Please go to Indiegogo, type in Charlie's London from East Lane to the Limelight and have a look at my book. You will see more about the making of the kid. You will see more about how Charlie's childhood influenced the films that he went on to create. You'll see about Limelight. You'll see about all these amazing things. Thank you, everyone, and see you later. Bye.